Let's try factoring out some expressions with rational exponents from other expressions with rational exponents. So here for part A, we want to factor x to the 3 halves from x to the 5 halves minus x to the 3 halves. And before we do this, let's do a quick aside here, like a little bit easier of an example. Let's try to factor A from, let's do A plus A squared B, just to look at what happens. When we factor something out to the front, right, we are essentially dividing every term inside by the thing that we're factoring out to the front. A squared B over A. That's what happens when we factor out, right? We're really dividing every term inside by that A because we're multiplying out here. When we do this, they cancel out, leaving 1, and then this would cancel the squared, and we'd get A times 1 plus AB. Okay, we don't usually do it in that amount of detail. We just factor out the A and we don't think about it, but all of this is really going on. Factoring means dividing each term. So let's do it here, right? We're going to factor x to the 3 halves out to the front of that. But we just decided that factoring out means dividing each term by it. So we have x to the 5 halves divided by x to the 3 halves minus x to the 3 halves divided by x to the 3 halves. Right? Factoring out is simply dividing each term in the expression by it. Well, here these are the same, so that all just becomes 1. Okay. But for this other term, we have x to the 5 halves divided by x to the 3 halves, and when we have an expression like this, we subtract the exponents. So this is really x to the 3 halves out front times x to the 5 halves minus 3 halves minus 1. Okay, well this gives x to the 3 halves times x to the 5 minus 3, which is 2 halves, minus 1, which finally simplifies down to x to the 3 halves times x, well, x to the 2 halves is simply 1, which we write as just x, minus 1. There we go. And you'll find this happens a lot of times. When you factor out one of these terms with a fractional or rational exponent, it ends up simplifying the remaining terms left behind. Let's try B. B says factor x to the negative 3/4 from x to the negative 3/4 plus 3x to the 1/4. Okay, same idea. We're factoring x to the negative 3/4 out to the front. Okay, from all of this. Well, if we factor x to the negative 3/4 out from x to the negative 3/4, that just leaves 1. When you factor out the whole term, just like when we factored the a out to the front here, it just left a 1. Anytime you factor out the entire term, it leaves a 1. Okay, so then we have plus 3x to the 1/4 over x to the negative 3/4. Because remember, factoring out is simply dividing each term. Okay, when we have the same base and rational exponents like this, one dividing another, we subtract the exponents. So this gives x to the negative 3/4 out to the front still. Then we have 1 plus 3x to the 1/4 minus a minus 3/4. Okay, I'm just subtracting the bottom exponent from the top exponent. All right, clean this up a little bit. X to the negative 3/4 times 1 plus 3x to the 1/4 plus 3/4 is 4/4. X to the 4/4, but that's just x to the 1, which is simply x. So we'll leave it like that. X to the negative 3/4 times quantity 1 plus 3x. Again, the same phenomenon. We're factoring out a term with a rational exponent, left behind a simpler expression.